right, so this week we're starting off with a really relevant topic, especially because it's starting to happen a lot around the world, and that is Nintendo's new guidelines and new rules and regulations within their terms and conditions about bricking the Switch 2 console. Now, for those that don't know, bricking the console essentially means stopping the console from running. So once it's bricked, you can't access any of it. It's done. It's a dead console, for lack of a better word. I've heard some people online call it a extremely expensive paperweight at that point in time. But the main idea is that if you break Nintendo's terms and services at all, they have the right to stop your console from working, pretty much. So it's basically saying if you mod it in any way, if you use pirated games or any sort of thing that's, like I said, going to break their terms and conditions in that more illegal side of things, they just stop your console from working. It's a big issue because a lot of people see it as, it's like, I've paid for the console, it's my console, why can't I do what I want with it? And I think this falls under a really gray area because obviously the doing what you want is an illegal activity. Piracy is illegal. Some of the modding that people do contains the piracy. So like they might get a specific mod that opens up a full library of the Switch 2 and then you can play whatever game you want on it. But it does mean that there is going to be a bunch of Switch 2s that are bricked and can't really tell the difference. So this is a hard one because I understand where the company's coming from, but at the same time, how do we know they're not going to abuse this power and you could just have an issue one day and next day your Switch is bricked? It's a really hard one. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's interesting because, you know, when you purchase something, typically you kind of think, okay, well, this is mine now. You know, if you were purchasing a computer and then someone told you couldn't use your computer for XYZ, you'd probably be pretty annoyed, right? It's not like it's a cheap kind of thing either. Like, it's an expensive piece of equipment, and that's what it is. It's a piece of equipment. So in some ways it's kind of like, where does that responsibility kind of end? Now, I have heard that it's only in the US that they're actually bricking devices. In the UK or the EU, they're just cutting off online service access. So slightly different, but still kind of means you can't, I don't know if you can download new games or anything like that, or if you just are relying on cartridges.
From what I understand, the way it works is the cartridge just tells the online store that you've bought the game. You just getting a key. You're not getting like a physical copy or anything like that. The Switch gives you the physical copy, which is just the boat to transport the key, if that makes sense.
Just a fancy key.
Yeah, realistically what they want to do is give you a game code card, but they also understand that Nintendo fans love collecting cases. Yeah. So they're trying to cater towards that case collecting, but at the same time trying to get rid of the physical copy. So it's really, really hard to understand where they're coming from with this. So you don't need an internet connection to play the game once it's installed. Okay. But you will need an internet connection to download the full game data for the first time when using a game key card.
Okay.
So they're called game key cards. They're not even called cartridges anymore. It's basically that.
Yeah.
Nintendo's just turning into a game key company, which is strange.
It is. It is strange when you're going to all that effort to make a cartridge. You would think, why not just put the game on there? But it's interesting though. I'm not sure how this compares to like Xbox and PlayStation and what their policies are, but I do think to a degree, like, it is in their terms of service. So if you're not reading those terms of service, this is like one of those ones that will get you. If you're planning on going to the local markets and buying some cheap like ROM with a bunch of different games on it, and you didn't read the terms of service, like, I feel like that's kind of on you. As you said, if you're doing something illegal, you know, I think the more worrying thing about this whole kind of discussion is this is one of the big downsides to moving to a digital marketplace, which is where we seem to be heading with the tech at the moment. It feels like everything is moving to digital. Physical media is kind of, it's not really being a thing anymore, to the degree that like you don't even have disk drives in your computers anymore. Like, we don't It's not a thing anymore. And I guess by moving to a digital kind of marketplace, we're actually giving these storefronts and publishers and things more control over our access to the games, because they can literally just switch it off, done. You know, it does bring up that big kind of discussion about physical versus digital as a whole, I think.
It's definitely hard. Like, even consoles are coming out with no disc drives these days. I've got a digital PS5 here. The strange thing with that, though, with the digital PS5 is they brought out the PS5 Pro with the digital only copy, and not too long after they ended up bringing out a disc drive attachment. So like, that does show that people are still wanting to get discs, especially for those older companies, Nintendo, PlayStation and Xbox. There's still people who love collecting that stuff. So there's still a big market for it, which surprises me as to the way things are going. It's obviously easier for the companies to do digital only stuff. Obviously it doesn't cost as much in publishing and things like that, because they don't have to make the discs and things. But games haven't changed price.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, like Nintendo's games, like, they're not doing full-on game cards, yet the games have gone up in price.
Yeah.
To like, I think they're like $120 or something like that.
It doesn't really make sense. Like, what are you paying for? Because I think the argument for why games cost so much is because they cost so much to manufacture the discs in the case and to put them in stores, and there's all of those kind of logistical and manufacturing prices associated with that, which is fair enough. Like, if you're paying for a physical copy of a disc and a case and everything and the art and everything, yeah, sure, of course it's going to cost more, but that's not reflected in the digital marketplace.
Yes.
You literally are paying the same. If you went to a shop and bought the game, it'd be the same price as it would be buying it online, which is weird.
Exactly. And like, looking at it now, so the new Mario Kart on Switch 2 is $120 AUD.
Gross.
The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which came out in like 2017, came out in 2017, so almost 10 years old, is $110. Wow. $110. The same price as Tears of the Kingdom, which released much further than that. Now, I understand that they're remastered for the new things, but like, still, that's going to be $110 for the next 5 years.
It does kind of beg the question of like, what am I actually paying for? And I guess that really comes into this discussion of whether or not we actually own a game that we buy, or whether we just own the license to play that game. Are we actually just buying like a lease for this device instead? Because you're dictating how I use it, which means I don't really own it.
Yes. Yeah. It's one of the big reasons why I went back to retro games. Because it's not just what are we paying for, it's like, at what point of the game are we paying for? We've seen releases like Cyberpunk, which I love CD Projekt Red, but that released terribly. I paid a lot of money for that and I couldn't play it within the first, I don't even know how long. And there's plenty of examples of that. Not so much in the indie scene, because they're pretty honest with what they're giving. It's like, this is in early access, there's gonna be some issues. AAA is like, it's a fully finished game, here you go. And like, you can't get through the main menu. And you're like, okay, what?
Okay.
So I've started going back to retro for that exact reason, because for the most part, I know if I put my game in, I can play it. There's no installs needed. There's no day one updates that's 40 gig, stuff like that. Like, it just doesn't happen. But that brings us to another interesting topic that is getting a lot of traction at the moment and is a very big thing in the gaming industry, and that is the Stop Killing Games initiative, which ties into this really well, because we're talking about the fact that a lot of these games are being made purely just to make money these days, and they don't really care what happens with the game once it's released, or once it's sort of had a lifespan for a little bit. Indie games have a roadmap, right? Yeah. We have things like Into the Dead has a massive roadmap of what they're planning to do for ages. Yeah. But there's games that come out, AAA, that don't have that, and they kind of just serve their purpose. Once they've served their purpose, they're done. So yeah, Stop Killing Games initiative. It's basically an initiative to say that we want to make sure our games are playable in the future. We've spent excessive amounts of money on these games, and we want to make sure that in 10, 15, 20 years' time, we can still enjoy the game. One of the big ones that they use as an example for this is The Crew. Have you heard about what happened to The Crew?
No, I haven't. What happened?
So basically, The Crew is a multiplayer racing game made by Ubisoft. It was an online-only game, so it required constant internet connection, even with the single-player mode. If you were offline, you attempted to launch the game, you'd get an error screen. You couldn't do it. So in December of 2023, Ubisoft delisted the game and its expansions from all digital platforms, suspended sales and microtransactions, and said that the game was going to be, or the servers were going to be shut down in 2024. And I think the big word there is microtransactions, because you've spent money on this game over quite a period of time. I know some people are talking about spending quite a fair bit of money, and it was still their favorite game. They were still playing it. It might not have had the massive fan base that it had, years before, but there were still people playing it. So they ended up shutting it down, and Ubisoft did offer refunds to people who recently purchased The Crew, but no refunds for people who had bought it from all the way back. So that's, your game money gone and your microtransaction money gone, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And then they revoked the licenses from players who had bought The Crew. So it wasn't just taking the game away. It was, you no longer have the license to play the game. I know there were some people that were trying to start up their own servers so that the game could live on, but that's just didn't want to happen. And that is what the Stop Killing Games initiative is sort of encompassing. It's the fact that these days it feels like a video game can be taken away from you at any given time if the developers or the company decides that's it, we're done.
It's an interesting issue because obviously I feel like when you purchase something, when you buy a game, you're not going, oh, okay, I'm going to lease this game for 2 years. It's like, no, I'm buying this game forever. And that's kind of the expectation you have when you buy a game, is that you will always have access to it. I understand servers being closed down, like public servers being closed down when a game slows down, because obviously servers are expensive to maintain, and I can understand a company not wanting to support a server forever, of course, because I don't think that's sustainable for a company to do. However, I don't think that it is too far-fetched to allow people to host their own dedicated servers. We've seen a lot of games have dedicated server functionality, and there's a lot of even indie games, even small teams, small studios, small publisher games have that dedicated server functionality. So it's obviously not a matter of can we do that? It can be done. It's obvious that it can be done. There's enough proof there that dedicated servers are a feasible way to continue this on. And a dedicated server means that the person running the server pays for it. So there's no cost to the publishers there. So I feel like, I understand closing down public servers, but I feel like, yeah, I agree. They should have some sort of functionality there for people to be able to run their own servers after those shut down.
100%. I'm looking it up now. So there's already games that do this. Halo Combat Evolved Edition. The official server's already shut down ages ago, but there are still community hosted dedicated servers through Project Cartographer mod. So that is allowed to happen. So there's people that can still play on it. And there's other games that do this. And if there's enough of a community, if someone's willing to pay for it, let them pay for it.
Exactly.
It doesn't take away from your situation. Like in the Cruise situation, microtransactions aren't going to be there anymore, but they're not going to be there anyway. You're not missing out on money either way. I don't see how it's that bad for a company to just go, all right, well, you guys, here you go, you run with it. In D&D, they make these new editions constantly. So we're up to 2024 edition or something like that, whatever the new rules are. But 5e is done. And before that, second edition, third edition, all that sort of stuff. There's still dedicated communities that are based around that make new content for it constantly. And it would suck if Wizards came out and said, you know what, you have to return all your books and you're not allowed to make any new content for this edition of the modules that we made. I want all of it back. So can you just send your books back and we'll just forget it ever existed?
Could you imagine? But yeah, I think, look, honestly, when it comes down to it, it's a money thing. They want you to buy the new game that is supported. They want you to buy The Crew 2. I don't know if that exists, but...
Yes, it does. Yeah.
You know, they want you to buy the next game. And that, I think, is what is driving these bigger companies, because it's the bigger companies. Let's be honest. It's EA, it's Ubisoft, it's these big companies who are basically going, you know what? We'll just stop the old game and then people will come play the new game. And I think it's so greedy.
Overwatch 2. They told everyone about this story mode. And oh man, I was so excited. Told everyone about this story mode. And they're like, Overwatch 1 servers will eventually be turned off. Overwatch 2 will be free. And we'll get this story mode. And you can pay for these battle passes and all these other things. It was like, all right, cool. I'm happy because they're relatively similar games. I'm happy for Overwatch 1 to kind of die if it means that I get the exact same experience in number 2, but they're adding on. So it was basically like a remaster, but then that never happened. But they closed down Overwatch 1 to force people to move into Overwatch 2. And that game's gone now. Overwatch, the original, you can buy like the old discs for it for the consoles. They won't do a single thing. It
feels like over the past probably 5 or so years, we've shifted with a lot of the bigger games into this seasonal style of game as well that is very heavy on battle passes and microtransactions and loot boxes and all of that stuff. So it's like we've shifted into this different kind of area of gaming in a lot of ways, and they're making money off these free-to-play games. Like, they're not really free-to-play.
Oh, yeah.
They're like pay-to-win kind of games.
I believe it was Battlefront 2 where you could pay, and it was pay-to-win. You could pay to get epic characters that had these insane abilities, or you could play the equivalent of like 1,000 years to unlock it. You're not really giving me a chance to actually unlock it myself without having to pay for it. And I believe that wasn't a free-to-play game either. I think you had to pay for that to begin with anyway.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of these kind of, you know, seasonal style content that people expect constant updates. Like, they expect fresh maps or fresh characters or fresh gear or whatever it might be, depending on what the game is. Every couple of months, they were expecting something new. So it's putting a lot of pressure on other games to compete as well. The gaming landscape has definitely shifted over the past couple of years, and I feel like we are moving away from, here's a game, play it, it's complete, you can play it forever. And now we're moving into this, you know, no, we expect constant updates, we expect new content, we expect this, we expect that, we expect this. And then you've kind of got that whole thing of like, okay, well, I'm doing that. I'm playing this seasonal game, like Overwatch. I'm playing this seasonal game. I'm investing time, I'm investing money into the content to buy all of these battle passes and this and that and everything else, especially if I want to keep up and be competitive in these games, because most of these games are the ones that are the like esports games as well. And I'm paying all this money because I want to keep up and I want to be good at this game, and you know, I really love this game. And then, you know, you're saying in 12 months time they can just turn the servers off and that's it, and all of that time and money and everything else is just done. Like, that seems wrong. And even if it's a free-to-play game and you never put money into it at all, it still seems off. Like, you know,
how do I say this without getting too into it? A lot of these companies are publicly traded companies, right? And the investors are like, where's our money from our investment? And obviously the companies need to make that money to give back to their investors and so on and so on. And it's just created such a strange environment where games just have to be pushed. We need to make as much money as we can, as quickly as we can, and then get the heck out so that we can start on our next one. And that sucks. You don't see this as much in indie games. There'll be a single solo developer who's like, man, I don't even care about the money. I just want you guys to enjoy my game. It'd be nice if I made some money from it, but I just want people to enjoy my game. And that's what it used to be. You know, I remember back when we were teenagers and stuff, the hype around games was massive. And game companies would do these awesome showcases and they'd have big advertisements at EB Games, and there'd be midnight launches with activities and all these other things, and there was really a culture around gaming. Nowadays, I feel like it's either one of two things, where it's a new game's coming out and everyone has to rag on it for the first 6 months it's out, and then people go, actually, this is not that bad. Or it's a terrible game packaged to look very, very good, and then we realize that it's got 2008 gameplay mechanics. And that's like kind of the two sides of the story. With AAA, Indie Games is that beautiful place where we can kind of sit back and see some good things happening. Update on the Stop Killing Games initiative. It has received 1.3 million signatures in the EU. One of the updates from that is that there may be some signatures that were faked and from overseas, which they're kind of looking into. But there is now also the standalone petition to the UK government, and there is a French petition specifically towards the crew, which is kind of cool. And there's massive things going on all around the world for people to sort of say, just make up a backup plan. Because at the end of the day, the Stop Killing Games initiative is just about backup plans. What sort of backup plan would you put in if things were to go bad? And for the most part, people talk about single player campaigns.
I think it's interesting because it is getting a lot of support now. So there is kind of people as part of the parliament coming out now and saying, you know, once you buy a game, you should own it, which I think is taking this even further than just servers being supported, because I think that's where it started, was servers being supported, and now it's kind of grown into this whole, but what am I actually paying for? And I think, to be honest, I feel like most of this boils down to companies not being upfront with their plans for supporting the game. If I knew that I was only paying for 5 years of support, like if I was like, if say the Crew 2 was on sale and they said, you know, yep, we're selling this game, we're guaranteeing 5 years of server support, and then we're not sure what will happen. I feel like that would be better than what is happening now. Obviously, we'd love for them to support it forever, but like it as a kind of middle ground, like at least be open with what the plans are. At least kind of say, hey, we're only planning on supporting these servers for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, and then adjust your price to match that expectation as well.
The other thing a lot of people talk about is MMOs within this. I know Pirate Software has spoken a lot about MMOs, basically just saying like you can't expect a company to make a backup plan for an MMO, which is predominantly online. Once the servers are off, the servers are off.
Yeah.
But once again, it's just, there's a lot of people talking about, well, let community-driven projects happen. If a server turns off, allow the community to have a chance at least running it. And then at the end of the day, if the community doesn't do a good job of it and they shut it down, well, at least there was an attempt made. You give people the option to still have it. And I think that's all anyone wants. Everyone that's a part of this initiative and this petition is, we want to own our games, and we want to know that we can play our games the way we want to play them. So if that means us running our own servers for it, then that means us running our own servers for it. That's pretty much where it sits. Do you have an overall take on this?
I think that this is more of a reflection on the overall industry than it is specifically about servers. And I think this is basically what's been boiling for the past probably 10 years. I think what's happening now is this is a result of the tech boom and us diving into a digital age with no infrastructure to support what that means, because no one had any idea of what was going to happen. You know, even 20, 30 years ago, if you had said, yeah, no, you just download your game off the internet, people would look at you like you were like crazy. Like, what the heck? What, you don't have a disc? You don't have that? I think this is actually quite a natural result of us embracing technology too quickly and not having the infrastructure to support that in place. And I think that there does need to be change. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's just more transparency. I don't know if it is, you know, a move to owning a game versus like leasing a game, and whether or not, you know, Steam will turn into something else, or like these digital storefronts will turn into like kind of like Netflix style things where you lease a game rather than, buying it, but then having the option to buy it. Like, I don't know how it will look in the future. I think it will be interesting. I think this has been boiling for a while, and I don't think we're going to see a resolution anytime soon. This is a good petition and a good kind of step to addressing these issues that are kind of brewing under the surface. I know there's also things like the microtransactions and the gambling side of things. People are like also looking into that as part of this. So there's a lot there. It's huge. And I'm interested to see what comes out of it. I don't think we're going to see anything concrete for a long time, though. I think this is going to be something that is going to take a long time. And I'm not sure if we're ever going to get there. I'll be honest with you.
I'm hoping, I agree, 100% agree. I don't think this is going to be the be all and end all of anything. I think this is going to start conversations. I think this is going to push some developers to change some practices, but I don't think it's going to do much. What I do hope that comes from this is that those big developers start listening to the community a little bit more and understand that we are the consumer, and at some point people are going to stop buying things. There's been a few games out over the past 2 years. I'm not going to mention them because I just don't want to, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to guess what they are. And they were hyped. They were quite hyped, some big AAA games. And when they come out, they just lack everything. They lack soul, they lack flow, they lack environment. There's massive games that should be absolutely groundbreaking that no one talks about anymore. There's games from 15 years ago. Let's talk about Skyrim. I know in most of my gaming conversations with friends, Skyrim comes up at least once or twice because it is a memorable game that was massive. It was buggy as, man. Oh man, that game was buggy. But it did everything else right. When now, most of the games that are coming out are buggy and they're not doing anything right. We're getting games that are huge with no living environments. It's all just like lush landscapes with nothing in them. We're getting a lot of walking simulators. And I really want the games industry to, number one, take a look at indie games. Big companies, Ubisoft, EA, all you big companies, look at some of the indie games and understand that these games are phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. They pack so much in. They're a small team and they do so much. And you just need to get better at making your own games. Baldur's Gate 3 is a perfect example of what a game could be. It's got branching narratives. It's so in depth with its scripting. The game mechanics are so in depth. There are so many things you can do in that game, so many places to see. I've played like 4 or 5 times and I know there's still content I haven't come across. There's other RPG companies that make those sorts of games that go, that's just unrealistic. You can't do that. Well, Larian did. Like, what do you mean it's unrealistic? They did it. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't know. Just do better. It's so hard for me to say.
No, but it's right. And I think the reality is if Baldur's Gate 3 was a AAA game, it would not have succeeded.
No.
Because they literally were told, you can't make this game. That's not possible. And then they went, well, let's just see. And I think that is indie to a T. That is the true kind of essence of indie games there, is basically kind of saying, you know what, we're going to do the things, we're going to make the games we want to make, and we're not going to give a rat's about what the industry expects or industry tells us is possible. We're just going to do it anyway. And that, I think, is why we're seeing the kind of boom of indie now, because we're getting so many people kind of go, you know what, I'm not content with graduating from university and then going and working at a studio and putting together some slop that I'm not proud of. That kind of like, no, you know what, I'm going to go out on my own. Yes, it's riskier, but I'm actually going to make something that I'm proud of. I'm going to make something that I'm passionate about, and I'm going to make something that I want people to enjoy. And you can tell in the quality of the games that, you know, it's not like anything else. And then you go the extra step further and you go to something like PAX and you meet the people who are making the game, and it will absolutely blow your mind. And that is exactly why we do what we do here, because, you know, indie games are unlike anything else, and once you've entered indie world, you won't come back. as you can probably testify to.
I 100%. This time last year, potentially, I was only just kind of delving into the indie world. I was playing games here and there. And once I sort of got in and started exploring what games were actually indie, because some of the bigger games that I knew of, I didn't even know they were indie.
Yep.
Baldur's Gate 3, for instance, it doesn't seem like an indie game because it's better than most AAAs. I 100% agree. One of the ones that recently I was able to chat to and see interacting with the community was the team from End of Ember. Those guys are so cool. They're so down to earth. They are extremely excited for anyone who shows interest in their game, and it's just so good to see. It's heading in there and chatting to them. They're so passionate. They're not really, you can tell they're not there just for the money. Like, there's a passion behind this. They had an idea and they had to run with it, and I love that. It's so cool to see the excitement around it. If you ever want to really get into gaming culture, head to PAX and head to the indie section. You'll find developers who are willing to talk to you about all styles of things, whether it be what games were based on, the mythology that the games were based on, the coding, the art style. Like, they are willing to talk to you for hours, if possible, about anything. And it's just absolutely fantastic. The indie scene is beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. But we'd love to know what you guys think. Let us know in the comments. This is huge. Like, this is such a big kind of landmark petition with the Stop Killing Games, and such a big issue that really affects everyone. Like, it affects every gamer, whether you are a console exclusive, whether you just play on the Switch, whether you just play PC. Like, this really does have like potential implications for everyone across the board. So we'd love to know what you think. Let us know your thoughts, feelings, what you think it's going to mean for gamers, because this is definitely going to be something that's ongoing. Yeah, I'm actually curious to see how this is going to pan out a bit as well.
100%.